Greetings, welcome. I apologize, the 3D printer is going in the background, so I'll try to talk loudly and hopefully it won't be too annoying. So at some point I want to get back to the spinning Adams pulse motor, but for some reason I kind of want to look at another topic first that kind of has my interest. And the question is this: suppose you want a high Q factor coil that's an air core that has high induction and low resistance, and it doesn't take up half your room. I mean, come on. Who hasn't asked themselves that? So that's what I want to look at, and I'm getting kind of overwhelmed here about where to begin. I mean, there are a lot of questions that need answering in this, and to just kind of come out at the end, I mean, I wonder if you can make a radiator coil. And there's, I'll tell you what. Well, okay, here's what we do. The first thing I'd say is, you know, I have this coil. Where are we? This thing. And it weighs like 10 pounds and it's like a foot in diameter. You could make this thing into a pancake coil, and that would be really good. It would probably also take up like this whole desktop. I have this thing, and it's nice, but even with pretty thin wire, it doesn't have as much induction as I'd like. So, you know, you could have this thing and have it go up to the ceiling, and yeah, that's not ideal. So let's go now to an induction calculator, and I'll show you one thing that has my attention. Okay, so let's go to the Great Electronics Tutorials website, where they give us a coil inductance calculator for a single layer air core. And let's make the diameter of the wire a little more reasonable. That's probably like 18 gauge or somewhere around there. Let's change the loop diameter to inches, like something I would print on the 3D printer. And let's say, to try to get rid of this, you have like 16 turns. Okay, so that would give us an induction of 000176, so 0.17 millihenries. So to keep a high Q factor, we don't want to go to a multi-layer coil. Here's something interesting. What if we made the loop diameter 4 inches? Now, because the circumference is pi times the diameter, that means we could fit twice as many loops, 32 instead of 16. So now we're at 000307. Let's go back, because I can't remember the other one. 8, no, come on. 8, 16, 176 versus 307. It's come close to doubling. It didn't double, but it came close to it, and it's the same length of wire, hence the same resistance. Now, of course, if you had 32 loops and you doubled the diameter, that's also going to improve things. But now you've also doubled your resistance. So it actually more than doubled the induction, but you did get a big increase in resistance. But in this example, we used the exact same length of wire, went from 4 there to 32 here, and we improved our induction. So I'd actually thrown all this in a spreadsheet a couple days ago, and let's say you have your 8-inch diameter and I used 18 winds, and I guess I said the wire diameter of 0.7. That has a small effect too, and that's what you get for your induction. And then a 4-inch diameter, so on and so forth, all the way down to an 1/8-inch diameter. This is the improvement for each time we cut the diameter of the coil in half. So at 1.75, and then here it starts to no longer get much of a benefit, going from 0.25 to 0.125. And, you know, I'm a little nuts. So one of the things I'd done a while ago, a few weeks ago, is I took some 22 gauge, or I took some 26 gauge and wrapped it around 22 gauge wire. And that was both to see, does this, you know, continue even further? And also, I was just thinking in the back of my mind, well, you know, you got ferrite cores, you got air cores, you know, no one ever uses a copper core. And I wonder if there's anything interesting you can do with that. The long story short is the induction stunk. And so this starts to go the other way once you get too small. And I wouldn't want to go below an 1/8 inch, but, you know, a 1/4 inch I think would be fine. And this is just the overall improvement in induction. I meant to make that the background, but that's fine too. So this is 12 times more induction for the same length of wire. This is 17 times more induction for the same length of wire. So I'm trying to see, like, is there a catch here? Because you're getting all this extra induction, you're not getting any more resistance. And, you know, I'm also nothing if not cheap. So if I can get 10 to 15 times more induction out and buy 1/10 of the wire, copper's not exactly inexpensive now. So that's nice, and you have a coil that might not take up the whole room. So let's talk about one thing that is very good about this approach, and then I'll talk about what may be a drawback, and finally there may be some ways to mitigate that drawback. If we go back again to electronics tutorials, we talked in previous videos about this transient curve, and this is what happens as you fill an inductor with current until it reaches its steady state maximum field strength. And so if you're looking to either like shoot it back into a cap or capture a flyback or a back EMF or a radiant spike, whatever you want to call it, and you wouldn't want to just leave the thing running at its maximal field strength for 10 seconds, because all you're going to get back is from the change in the field strength. And if you went here, you know, that would be better because you're using a lot less current. And it turns out that for the field strength that you get, the maximum field strength, as compared to how much current you put in, it just keeps improving the further and further and further the earlier you get here. And what that translates to is a better and better Q factor, or a better and better radiant spike. So how do we define this tau time? And they tell us right here, it's induction over resistance. What did we just say here? That this is the same length of wire the whole time, but you're getting all this extra induction with a smaller air core. So let's have a little fun here and just pretend that the resistance of that wire, oh shoot, it's not much. I mean, I'm going to say 0.1 ohms. You know, maybe it's 1 ohm, maybe it's 0.2 ohms. We'll just say 0.1 ohms, 0.1. What is our tau, our L over R? Millihenries need to be converted to henries. So divide that by 1,000, and there's our millihenries. And now we just, to get our seconds for the tau time, we just say tau is this divided by this. Alright, I'll make it 1 ohm. Sorry. So if we make it 1 ohm, then our tau time for this, when we wind it this way, is 0.238 milliseconds. Our tau time here is 4.21 milliseconds. So let's say you had a 1 millisecond pulse. Now if we go back here, when the tau time is like 0.2, you'd be all the way out here fully saturated. But when the tau time is 4.21, you'd be way down here on this curve. So in other words, you'd have a much better Q factor for a given length pulse when you have this higher induction with the same resistance. Now, let's talk about drawbacks. What are the two bugaboos one runs into with this? And that is, as you go with a higher and higher frequency, your R that we're saying is 1 no longer stays at 1. When it starts running into either proximity effect or skin effect. And if you have a multi-layer coil, the one that you generally run into first is proximity effect, unless you're using like 6-gauge wire or something. You can go pretty fast before skin effect becomes a problem, and really probably, you know, in general, I can't go that fast with these solid-state relays. So the thing that you're really worried about is proximity effect. So the first thing is that you want to not have this a multi-layer coil. You just want it to be one layer. However, now you see you're still going to get a potential proximity effect from these winds. Now what's the problem then when we go with the smaller air core is instead of these 10, you're going to have like 300. And that's 300 more chances to run into proximity effect, right? So what's the way around that? You can do a flat pancake coil. And I'm also going to, you know, have a look at that. But again, that's going to take up a lot of space. Now, with a flat pancake coil, you could get rid of everything if you space the winds out. You know, there's no longer any chance for anything to run into in this plane, and so the only thing left is one wire next to the other in the spiral, and if you put a little space there, then the only thing left after that is skin effect. You've eliminated proximity effect. Now what's the other problem, practically speaking, is that if you make the core, you know, like 1/4 of an inch, the thing's going to be like 30 feet long. So, you know, what are you going to hang it out your window? So that's where you're again running into the living room isn't big enough. So let's think about this for a minute. What if you had a coil like that and you wind it like this, or you have a coil like that? See, now you're getting so where you can fit it in a more reasonable space. You do see horseshoe-shaped electromagnets. I mean, I'm a little bit worried that we've talked about near and far field magnetic effects. I mean, would this start broadcasting back to here? Would that be this broadcasting to there? Would that be bad or good? But as I said, I'm encouraged because you see horseshoe-shaped electromagnets, at least with the core. With an air core, it might be different. So what about something that looks like this? I mean, it's not all lined up yet. I need to work on it. Let's fix this. No, I already merged it. But that, you get the idea there, and you know, you could extend that both, you know, in all 3 dimensions. And now you could really start to as long as this doesn't interact with that and with that, then you could really start to fit a lot of wire in. Now, will setting it up like this mitigate the interwire interactions, because now you got like 300 winds instead of 30 in terms of proximity effect. I doubt it. Oh yeah, one last thing is, what about that? Or, to put it more plainly, an air core like that. And I've been reading, they do have toroidal air cores. Now, with a ferrite core, when you complete the magnetic flux path, there's a great improvement in induction. I don't know whether that happens. I mean, maybe because there's no magnetic ferrite in there that it doesn't make a difference, but you could do this as well. What I was getting at there, though, is I don't think that just having like, well, this part's facing this way and this part's facing this way, I don't think that's going to get rid of the problem of potential proximity effect from having like 500 winds instead of 30. But really, until we start winding and looking at it on the oscilloscope and with the LCR meter, we're not going to be sure how it behaves. But if I had to guess, you're still going to be running into a potential problem with all these winds, even though it's a single layer, because they're all going to want to interact that way, and it's not a pancake coil. So what might we do about that? Well, I was thinking of making it like a pyramid just to like freak people out. Oh, not that one, this one. Top radius. Okay. Let's make this more like 1.5, so I can illustrate it better. It's not a pancake coil, but you get nearly all the benefits of a pancake coil, I would guess. I haven't played around with it yet. But you have your first wind here, and then the second wind is up here, and it's not really seeing, the magnetic field entirely coming up out of the plane. By the time you get to the third wind, it's not seeing the first wind, it's seeing a little bit of the second. So you get nearly all of that, wind to wind stuff gone, just like you would with a pancake coil. But then, the first thought is, well, what do you do once you get to here? I'll show you. Here's what you do. Let's see if I got the plane right there. Yeah. And how tall is this? 1. And just to complete the idea. Boom. So that's what you do. So instead of these squares, those you would have them replaced by something that looks like this. See, that's what I'm getting at. Place that with this. And now you're getting rid of the skin effect, almost like a pancake coil, not quite as good, but close. And you can fit a lot of wire in a reasonable amount of space. So as long as it doesn't rebroadcast to other parts of the coil, then it should be possible. But we got to start at the very beginning and just confirm that if we make this diameter smaller, that we're getting this improvement in induction without a greater length of wire. So let me throw these coil forms together on Tinkercad for you, and then we'll print them, and I think in the next video we'll wind them and see what they do. So I wanted to show you all of the coil forms for the first set. There's going to be a lot of them, but it's taken too long. This stuff takes a long time to print, and there may come a day when we abandon all bonds of friendship and nerdish pursuits. But it is not this day when we forsake all ridiculous experimenting and look for a regular paying job. But it is not this day. By all that you hold dear, men of the West. Next video, we wind. Alright. Sorry. Pardon me. Stay healthy, and thanks for coming along. We'll make some progress, won't we? Bye-bye.